What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. I am your host, Reckless Rex Ruger. That, of course, is the Freddie Mercury puppet watching my back. Don't think for a second that he is asleep at the wheel. He is on high alert, even if it doesn't look it. First and foremost, I will address the elephant in the room and dispense of any mystery. You're looking at the smoldering good looks. You're looking at the luscious blonde locks. So I will tell you, yes, I am the one and only love child of one Diamond David Lee Roth. So there's that. Now, I digress because that's not why we're really here. We're here for another incredible episode of Pod Scum, and that's what I'm going to give you guys with a return guest. And when someone comes on multiple times, I like to take the liberty of referring to them as a friend of the show, which I don't think anybody would take umbrage with. I think most people would embrace that, lean into it. After all, they are coming back for a second, third, multiple times. So, and certainly I hope, Joe would consider himself that at this point. Only a second appearance, but I hope it's the second of many because I enjoy talking to him. And I think he's an amazingly talented musician. And FUGAZI, one of my all-time favorite bands, so innovative, so groundbreaking, so ahead of their time. But before my guest gets in here, let me go into pimp mode. The pimp hand's feeling strong. It's Monday. Well, I can't go into pimp mode because my guest is here, so I can't promote till the end of the podcast. So you guys just get to wait around because my guest is here. I'm not leaving him waiting. We're jumping in, so here we go. I'm excited. You're excited. We're excited. Here we go again. And Joe, there he is.
How you doing?
I feel like you're always laughing at the hair, Joe. Is there some hating going on your end?
There's a lot of energy on your end.
There's a lot of energy on my end. Yeah. And you know what? I can't really put a finger on it because it is Monday and I did just spend 8 hours. I work in healthcare, which is draining.
Wow.
Yeah. Extremely draining, man, as a nurse. So you're right. I have no business having this much energy.
No, it's just it's overwhelming to me because I just opened the screen and the screen is dead and then you came on it.
So I livened it up.
It totally livened it up.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Yeah. I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
Hang in there.
Yeah, I want to ask you, man, first and foremost, because when I was going through, again, topics to talk to you about, and I've had you on before, for a short time, you lived abroad. Correct me if I'm wrong, in Italy, correct?
Yeah.
And now, and I just had this conversation actually with Eugene Robinson, who now is living abroad in Spain himself. I'm wondering, when you were over there, man, living abroad, is the energy different over there, and did it change the way you approached creativity at all?
Well, it's so much is different. It's really hard to put your finger on why. I mean, I had spent a lot of time passing through on tour, of course, is different because you're in a city every night and you get the feeling about a place but never really spending time there. And then I started to go back and then I met my partner. And so, of course, I actually had spent more time in Italy. But I did kind of wonder before we moved there, like, am I still going to be able to create in the same way or have that feeling? And it really has much more to do with your history and whatever your creativity is. Because in my case, it was connected to a band. So it was connected to specific people.
Right.
So really the removal of myself from that particular, Washington, D.C., where I had this history with people who lived here. And of course, specific people. Guy was gone, but Brendan and Ian were left.
Right.
So, in fact, when I returned, I started to play with both of them in different projects. So, it was very welcome to be able to do that. And it is like the history you share with people in terms of being in a band. This is particular to me.
Right.
My thing is built on, like, I want to be in a band. I want to be an integral part of a band. I don't want to just, disappear into a band. It's just part of what I've always thought was like a great thing to be creating in. So I think that is what comes into play the most. And I did discover a music community that was very interesting to me, and it did inform music I tried to make. That's when I started trying to make instrumental music. And then I came back, you know, and the most I've done since I've come back is what I've done with the MESSTHETICS, and that is instrumental music. And that was based on playing what I had made in Italy before I left, which I didn't understand and wasn't a band.
Right.
I used to just get to people drop by my apartment and I'd plug in directly, like I'd have their guitar they'd bring over or whatever. And they added to what I was doing, you know, but I didn't understand what it was. And I mostly didn't like what I was doing because I sort of set them in motion. And then I would look at it and go, this is where I want it to go, but I'm not doing what I like. It was just a weird process,
right?
Because we weren't playing together. You know, it was one item followed by the other item. It was not communal creativity, you know.
Right.
So, you know, I think everything is just so particular to one's experience and what one is setting out to do, or you know, what's your thing that you're trying to do. And so changing something like that, changing country, it could just be cities. I could have gone to a city in the United States where, I don't know, there's a lot less of a music scene, a lot less people to get involved with, and it might have run kind of similarly.
Right.
The difference is I was in a big city. There's a different thing going on musically with popular music in Rome. And then the thing I liked was like this weird jazzcore thing people did. They were just doing out music by the people who they seem to have studied music at some point, took it in their own direction, but, you know, took it pretty far. The people that I did meet who played, they were really good players. And that was kind of unique to the situation of being there. So I think the longer I would have stayed there, the more I would have like leaned into that and trying to understand who is this going to work with and how do I develop in this.
But it sounds like your experience over there was good, man. So, like, if you don't mind me asking, man, what was the impetus for coming back to the States?
Well, the thing is we went there because Fugazi had stopped playing. And you know, my mind was basically unraveling. I mean, I was like, what? I have a child. I mean, what have I done? You know?
Right.
And at the same time, well, I'm not the brightest person in the world, but I refused to I tried to get a job at the library, and they were like, we hire students who are studying to be librarians.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, fuck you then. Like, I'm not getting a job. It's really, so it's out of my mind. So I was like, I'm going to keep doing music no matter what, you know? And we moved around a bit, and my partner had been here for almost 10 years, moving here from Italy. And I just realized it felt like I owed her that much time at least. And we went over there without really a plan, other than we really wanted to raise our daughter there.
Right.
So we did that. She did 1st through 8th grade there. But really, I didn't have a job, you know. They didn't necessarily need a bass player. I probably could have got hired into a good, you know, a lucrative like working band just because I had played bass in Fugazi, but I just couldn't do that. That was not have been interesting music to me. So I just insisted on playing, but I was not making a living. So we really came back for financial.
Makes sense.
And I mean, you know, we couldn't get a house and like all kinds of crap. Like I just had to kind of start over again.
Sure. I get it. So now that you're over age 60, and I hope you don't mind, you don't seem like one of those guys who's going to be too uptight about people knowing your age. I'm 52. I'm headed in that direction myself in a few more years. What's creativity like over the age of 60? Has being creative gotten easier as you've gotten older?
I mean, I think everyone has to kind of work out, you know, their thing. I'm starting to accept the idea that there isn't going to be like the one other band.
Yeah.
Like nobody thinks that way anymore. And I'm like, you know, I've been out of my band for like almost a quarter of a century. Like, can I accept this fact? So maybe other people would figure this out faster. it's been a long time for me to kind of get that wedged into my mind. And I'm starting to like just play music with people, trying to understand the sound of what they're doing is an interesting sound to me. And so I've started to work with a viola player. There's a local guitar player that I heard play acoustically who never does that and is just interested in fooling around with that. So that, in other words, I don't really understand what it is, but I'm pushing myself to just follow that and find out what those sounds are and what it is to play like that. I also realized when I picked up the bass at 19, I had really kind of put down, you know, my pencils and brushes, and I had stopped doing visual art, which I had done for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I've always gone like, well, maybe when I'm older. And now I'm like, well, you know,
Yes.
time is going to run out.
Yeah.
So I teach, you know, so I'm always telling people the psychological things that the barrier that we need to get past to write, and stop thinking about it. Just write. You'll figure out what's good about it, and you'll learn how to organize it if you'll just put it down. Just put anything down. Just start getting things down. And I was like, why don't I do that with this visual art thing? I don't know what it is. I don't know what will come of it. It doesn't matter. But that's what I do, because I was so successful at not getting hired that no one is going to do that now. I mean, for what?
Right.
That's
good advice, because I feel like what you just said is something that I needed to hear too. Because I oftentimes write, and I have a focus. I certainly have a particular story and a chapter of my life that I want to tell. But sometimes I do that too. I just don't put it down, or I'm a victim of self-editing as I'm going along and critiquing it, rather than just letting the creative process just happen and then go back. I'm stopping at intervals, and I'm being too hard on myself.
Yeah, when you create like writing, but even draw. I think any kind of art, if you're making film, whatever it is, it's the editing that is going to like get to the point. So in other words, you shoot or you just jam with people, and then you go back and assess that. You listen to it. And that is when you really start to work with, I like this, I don't like that. That's all writing really is.
Right.
What we like, as opposed to what we edited out because we don't like it. Now, until you do something, there's nothing to talk about. Liking or disliking. So the things I tell my students are, the things that the psychological thing to overcome is, I don't like it. It sounds like so-and-so. Everything I do sucks. And those are the things that keep us from just doing it. So I say, you're not allowed to like it. You're not allowed to think about it. Just make a loop. Any kind of thing. You got to get like a dozen of them. And, working is kind of that way in almost any medium. You got to get enough of it down that you're going through it. Well, in fact, what I'm talking about is working alone, which I'm not interested in. I don't really want to. So I set this up to give people something to work with so they don't feel alone. It's a way of like tricking yourself into like, oh, that's kind of coming from somebody. What is that thing? I have to have a dozen of them. And then I have to go through them one at a time, make a change, move on to the next one, and do them all before I can go back to the first one.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
And so that's like a process. And I feel the same way, that I have to do some version of that to get myself making visual art again. It has to just be done. Think about it later.
Yeah. You got to just kind of push through, so to speak. And so, you've mentioned a couple times since the top of the interview, Fugazi. This probably seems like one of those questions that you've answered in the past, and maybe it is documented somewhere. And forgive me for asking it if it is, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask, because everything that was old, what was once old, becomes new again. People get thrown lots of money to come back. Would we ever see Fugazi again? Because all you guys are still here and still, able-bodied and healthy and able to make music. I don't want to get beat up in the comment section where people saying, you had JOE LALLY on there. Why don't you ask him if we'd ever hear from Fugazi again?
Sure. No, it's a legitimate question. I mean, that is really what I'm going to be known for. So I can't blame you for asking.
Yeah.
It's really, at this point, the way I see the four of us when we were together, in order to get something rolling, to get sort of the machine moving again, to do anything. For our particular band, it's not just like a band where you could rehearse 2 hours worth of music and then go out and take it on the road.
Right.
It will require so much time together where we are understanding like what are we now, because we are not necessarily those people that we were then.
Right.
We can't. I mean, Guy may very well be able to bend himself into different shapes and fall off of stages, but you know, you can't really demand that of somebody who is now like, you know, you got to look out for what's happening to your body,
Right.
you know. And he was very physical, you know. He's just a physical performer, so it's like it's just not fair to just try to be that. And so for us, we would have to figure out who we are. It would require a lot of time together, and we just don't get that. He's in Brooklyn, the rest of us are in DC. And so you know, time has changed some, and his child has gotten older, and so there's that possibility to be around each other more. But it's a really slow process, and it would take the four of us quite some time to get. So we're talking about like just so much time that I can't even say what it would be, but it hasn't even begun, in other words. So that's why it's just so up in the air. Like, well, who knows?
Right.
I never want to.
So it's kind of a never say never thing at this point.
I never want to say that. I mean, I never want to say like, because if you can't get all the things in place to actually go out and tour, I mean, geez, you can get together and write music. If you like what you did, you can always make, you know, a record. I mean,
right.
So I don't want to say no, because it's like, well, if you start thinking about every aspect of it and trying to put it back exactly, okay, it's really hard. But if you don't have to do all that, and you can do some aspect of it, okay, maybe, you know.
Right.
So I like to keep it open.
I'm wondering, man, and again, it's probably like another age-related question, because I know this has changed for me as I've gotten older, man. And I've asked this of some artists as of late. Is there anything specifically, because the world is in such a tumultuous place, it is such crazy times, what keeps JOE LALLY up at night, man? Is there anything that you fear or have that weighs heavy on the brain?
You know, it's really going to be, you know, the long term. I mean, I just never had a plan B, but I have to say that I'm trying to say too many things here. I never had a plan B, and so somehow this is supposed to work, and yet there's no way that this is really working, you know.
Right.
And I do, thank goodness we did get to buy this house during COVID, when everything was falling apart. We somehow managed to buy a house, and you know, it's going to be paid off. Like, I'll probably be dead, you know.
Right.
But
same here.
But it's so you do, those are the things that you're just kind of like, will it all, you know, I mean, so it is a financial thing, but I made those decisions so long ago, you know. I'm hoping that, I mean, it's not fair to my child, but my partner did know who she got involved with.
Right.
But I did make those decisions a long time ago, where security was like something I was like, I mean, I quit a really, really good job with a really, really good future. Free schooling for computers between 82 and 86.
Yeah.
I worked at Goddard Space Flight Center. I worked for a government contractor for NASA.
So that sounds like a pretty damn good gig. Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't care at all. And they just kept giving me more money, you know. And I would have been able to learn things because I liked art. This guy who was making maps with this machine that made maps, I was, you know, he was just like, oh, you understand what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I know I would have, but I just did not care. And I was still taking, you know, drugs, like in a reckless way. And things just would not have turned out well. So that kind of security and that kind of just sort of buying into the way life seemed to be shaped for me, I just was like, I'm not having any of that. And that's how I got away from the drug like mindset.
Yeah.
I became a roadie. I quit that job to be a roadie. did
Well,
it
so
too.
those are big pitfalls in the music world, though, man. Can you elaborate a little bit, man? Because it is nice that now we're in an age where we can talk much more freely now without the stigmas of mental health, depression, addiction. How deep did it go for you? Because those are real pitfalls in the music world. You do see a lot of people suffer from mental health, depression. We think of like the Kurt Cobains, people taking their lives, or suffering with addiction. You know, how deep and dark did it get for you, and how did you dig yourself out of it?
Yeah, I didn't get. I was just reckless about it, but I never had, I didn't use needles, Um, but it's the thing about it is that even though I didn't give in, I got really close just before everything changed, and that was due to like this one guitar player, Fred Smith, convincing his band Beefeater to take me on tour as a roadie. It absolutely changed my life.
Yeah.
It allowed me to move away from that. And I was going to this music scene that they were a part of in Washington, D.C., like by myself. I couldn't get my friends to be involved. I couldn't drag them from the suburbs to do this. So doing that really helped me see. I saw, the United States for the first time. We went into Canada. We spent like 2 months in a van, and everything was so much better for me. But I want to say that what really happened there is a psychological change. And that's the thing about the way I saw things according to the way I was brought up, and everything that was, my schooling, whatever kind of influence that came in as information, I was not having it. I just refused to do it.
Yeah.
So part of becoming a musician, it's really weird because I do not like Billy Joel's music, but I watched that Billy Joel documentary. Have you seen that?
Yes. Yeah.
It's like literally the same story.
Yeah.
It's just he's going through the same thing. And so I think, and I don't want to say every musician has the same people come into it in all kinds of ways. But I do want to say that often this thing about like wanting to create and wanting to communicate with people is a degree of sensitivity.
Oh, sure.
To want to do that, and possibly not to do it very well socially on your own, that you can now speak to a whole bunch of people and you don't actually have to talk to them personally.
Right.
Or you can appear to be social by being on a stage.
Right.
And not actually be a social person.
You're communicating with them in a different, in an alternative way. Yeah.
And to me, that's a very, very deep way, because it's through vibration, which is everything.
Yeah.
It is what everything is made of. And so my take on that is that there are people drawn into what is this business or this music thing that, we're relating this way. It's really part of what is bringing people into it. Is they're reacting to this vibration thing. It's speaking to them. It's just, there's this kind of music and that kind of music, blah, blah, blah. But it's essentially that. It's speaking to them, touches them in a way that they think that they know that they must also do this. And then it's like not even a choice.
Right.
I got to this point where I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And then it's like, it turns out I would live in a van to go around and work for a band.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what sense does that make? Okay,
Right.
so there's something psychologically going on about society as a whole. So I grew up with this kind of music that I loved. That really was the first music that spoke to me, that was made essentially by Black America. There was other music too, but I'm looking at Black America that is having this effect on me, and I'm like not really in touch with it because I'm in a white suburb. Looking at the people around me, some of whom come up with great names for people like me who listen to that kind of music. And I'm generally like, I'm a second generation American. And here's people who've been, most all of these people's families have been in this country for so long. And, they're talking about the struggles they're going through. And if you look at it at all, and if you can see it or feel it at all, it's communicating to you. And so all of that sort of that aspect of society, the absolute imbalance, the injustice of things, is at the core of what is moving me through my life. And that's what's going on. I mean, there's just an absolute refusal to play along with what is going on. Things are completely wrong. Now, the choice to like take more drugs was not a good idea.
Right.
But I'm, just working with things the best that I could,
Right. Right.
I mean, I started that when I was 13 because everything was just coming through my neighborhood. It was just there, and we were experimenting, and it just.
So in a lot of ways, you got it out of your system even before your musical career, like really was on its upward trajectory.
Yeah, it had this effect where it was about to suck me into the kind of worst part of the music thing because I was getting into doing music.
Yeah.
But I was connected to people who weren't, behaving all that well in that regard. And then that change came where I suddenly was shifted and it became the thing that was actually saving me from it.
Right. Right.
And I was just being who I was. I wasn't putting on any, and before that I was kind of putting on different, kind of guises in a way to try to go, can do this kind of music,
Where do you think a band like Fugazi would be in today's music industry right now, man? Like, because even though the industry has changed and we do see streaming platforms and we have kind of seen the dissipation of labels, we are seeing a lot of bands doing it the DIY route nowadays, which was a lot of of the ethos and the stuff correlated with Fugazi. I don't know. I don't know if in today's world we could have seen the ticket prices kept down the way you guys wanted to keep ticket prices down. But other than that, though, a lot of the principles you guys were operating under, man, are starting to kind of come back around now.
Yeah, it might be that a number of people are trying to say, how do you make this thing work?
Yeah.
When it's becoming like the rest of society, there's a enormous gap between those who have and those who don't. And
right.
So those who can be heard as musicians or be successful and those who don't, yes, it seems like a wider gap. So they may be trying to look to say, well, how can that thing work? And we're an example of that. But do you know this band Clutch?
Sure. Yeah.
So we did a show with them the other night. We played Frederick County Fair.
Okay.
And they're from that area of Maryland. And it was really cool to play a fair. We didn't nearly have as many people in the seats as it was outside where the demolition derby takes place, but they put seats on the ground.
Right.
And it was totally awesome. It was everything I wanted it to be because it was playing a fair, like Elvis used to do.
Right. Right.
So,
yeah. And they're a pretty heavy band too.
They are awesome. And they had that place full and everybody was just fucking loving it. And it was cool to see. But now that's a band that is not just completely connected to one label. There's like, from what I understand, there's a number of labels that have put out their albums, but they exist in that way that is theirs, on their terms, doing their music.
Right.
And to me, that's that kind of band. And they saw, I was talking to the drummer before we played, and he was like, I used to come see you guys play in like, whatever it was, 88 or 89 or something like that. And, playing outside at DuPont Circle, in a traffic circle, basically in DC. They had shows on a stage, that was boards on the ground.
Yeah. Well, you guys played some pretty innovative places though. I mean, you guys would make gigs happen in some pretty unorthodox places.
Those were just cool, like shows that did take place. I saw other shows there. It was just cool to see those things. That's what inspired us all to want to do these different things and to play music in general, because it was like, it doesn't have to just be this one thing. It's what you make it. But it's bands like that make it. I don't know how you do it these days because I think you try to make your presence known, and so there's all kinds of tools to do that. But how you get people's interest, how you get them to pay attention. I mean, I still think you got to write a song. I mean, you just in the end, you just got to write something,
something that resonates. Yeah.
And if it hits people, well, then yes, you can get that video that they can actually be watching you play. There's people who are nowhere near you, you know, and then you try to build a thing locally that can expand and you can go out farther and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, I clearly have no clue. I mean, I'm definitely aware of that thing for generation gaps. You know, we're of the age where you look at your kid listening and you're like, oh my God, that's the difference between like ballroom dancing and like getting into heavy rock, you know. It's me and what my daughter's listening to, where I'm like, why isn't the melody longer than like one thought, you know?
Right.
It's so weird, but you're like, oh my God, I'm old as shit. That's what the answer is.
That's the answer. That's the answer. Yeah. You hit it on the head. There's that gap right there, that generation gap that we always used to hear about. And now that we're at that age, man, we understand it now, you know?
Totally. Because of course, with a thing like music, which we've looked upside down, backwards through the century, you know what I mean? I keep going back. When we went, for example, we went to Brazil, FUGAZI went there. I was like, why, you know, Ian had gone there as a roadie for L7 with some Nirvana shows and the Chili Peppers. There was these huge arena shows, and Ian was a bass tech. And he came back. Kurt had given him a tape of stuff he was given of Os Mutantes. Okay, so they're like the Brazilian Beatles from first album is 68 or something, you know. And it's like 67, 68. So you're just like, what? How is that music like that? Then there's this dictatorship and they're not letting music in. And then you're like, how did they even? And so we went there a couple of years after that, I went to a record store literally looking for someone to play me old Brazilian music. What did that sound like? And I learned about Noel Rosa, the guy from the 30s, and you know, Cartola, samba guy. And just, I mean, it was just real. That's what you want to know, right? And so you think of yourself as like, oh, I know about music.
Right.
But it's still the same thing. Like,
right.
It's still the same. I'm just old as shit. I don't matter in a way, you know. I just don't.
Yeah. And like now your kids are looking at your music the same way that we probably looked at our parents' music, you know. But exactly. It took me a long time though, man, to realize though, man, and maybe you realize this with your own parents too, man, that my parents were listening to fucking great music, man. They were. I didn't think so. I didn't think so at the time, but now I go back, you know, it's funny that you referenced like, you know, I mean, like, you know, black music, and, you know, my father was always listening to Motown and blues, and I kind of laughed that stuff off and scoffed at it because I was a metalhead teenager, you know what I mean? And that stuff just wasn't cool to me. And now I find myself, you know, you hear that statement all the time. You end up listening to your parents' music, but you do.
Well, I think there must be some of that feeling of wanting to understand.
Yeah.
You know? And then that connection from me is to some degree through like jazz standards, because I don't, you know, my parents, they didn't seem to care about Elvis at all.
Yeah.
They, you know, and they're older. I mean, my mom is 94. I don't know what.
Wow. God bless her. Wow.
94. And my dad's been gone a while, but I didn't realize like what their music thing was at all until we had like a 25th wedding anniversary that the kids put on for them and sort of surprised them with, and they danced, and it suddenly occurred to me, oh my God, this is their connection with music. Like they can totally dance.
Yeah.
You know? And it was all this kind of pre-war that kind of dancing that you did, you know?
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, so I didn't, you know, in a way, I think you do take it in to some degree to try to understand your parents. I mean, you never do understand them because you're like, they're your fucking parents. Like they were never kids.
Right. You never think of them that way. Yeah.
But they were. And so you spend your life trying to get your head around like, what kind of kid were they? What is it? It doesn't make any sense. And then you realize they were just as stupid as you were when you were.
Right. Just
they didn't know any better when they had kids either, you know?
What was the, so where do you see now? Because there's been so many shifts and these seismic changes in the music industry, where do you see the industry being like in, let's say, like in another 10 years from now? Where will we be? Like, obviously we're here, we're with streaming, we're not going to go backwards. There are still people that do love the physical product. You know, I don't know if tapes or CDs or any of that stuff will come back around again. Vinyl seems to have made a resurgence, but like, you know, have you done any foreshadowing? Do you project where we'll be in 10 years, 15 years?
No, I have to say that part about, like, I mean, certainly I just talked about history enough because of where it's so important to me, like music that is older and where it comes from, and just anywhere you can find the inspiration to make music. But the future, like, I don't mind it being unknown, you know. I try not, and I can't, like, as far as the band goes, I can't sit around listening to my band. I could barely watch that film that came out, you know, We Are a Band from Washington, D.C. I watched that once. I don't know if I can. I think we should do like another version of that, where the guy should edit better and put in videos that cover a proper span of the years that the band existed. Guy doesn't pick up the guitar till like halfway through the movie or something.
Right.
And that's not right exactly. So anyway, that being said, I'm like, I'm not going to watch that. I can't live in that. I start getting pulled into it emotionally.
Yeah.
And I just can't go there. I can't, like, and so I don't want to be there. And I don't know any more than I'm pretty happy in right now.
Yeah.
And so as far as the music industry, well, the whole thing is just, I mean, I'm not into it anyway.
Right.
You know, why do I need to think about what it's going to be? Hopefully it's going to burn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's probably healthy. That's probably a healthy way to think.
I
don't think about it too much is the way to think about it.
I don't know what, you know what I mean, why I need to spend too much time there. Because, and I want to explain, most of the reason for that is that I know what is involved for me to make music and write music, and the things that make me want to write music, like finding the sounds that other people are making, and then specifically the other people that I want to be with, spend time with. They don't even have to be the best players on earth, because geez, can you have a meal with them? Can you live in a van with them, you know?
Right.
So that's a big part of it. And so I know it has nothing to do with what you write and what people say and what's in magazines, and the things that you write, you know, that you're creating for. And this goes with art too. There just can't be that. The future just kind of doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that aspect of it is like what can keep one from, if I think about that stuff a lot, I just literally won't do anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It holds you back. It does.
It just, I find it to be a bit of a barrier, I guess. And I know that the focus, well, it's really that I'm not going to get anything done thinking about the future. I know I can get things done thinking about the now and the particular elements I know that I can sink my teeth into, get my hands on.
Right.
And that's what's important. And that's where you don't look at, you know, any other part of the picture. You just keep at this thing you understand as a process that you have to go through this process to come up with anything on the other end.
I think young bands would benefit too from hearing, man, you know, because obviously, you know, you can go to some bands, you can Google them, you go to their Wikipedia page, especially like in the extreme metal, hardcore, punk rock world. You sometimes will often see a revolving door or like a laundry list of ex-members. You know what I mean? How did you guys balance your band relations? Because it was really just you, Guy, Brendan, and Ian, and you guys didn't have you know, this guy's in, this guy's out, this guy you know is out for temporarily, you know what I mean? You guys really seem to have it figured out, you know what I mean, for the tenure of the band. How did you guys make the band relations work?
You know, I think we really I think you have to want to be in a band to make a band work like that, you know, because there were times when I just thought like I wasn't as useful as I should be. The band. There were times when I thought I should not be in the band. You know, and if I could get up the nerve to actually talk to anyone in the band about it, I would be convinced back into the band, you know, like.
And this wasn't feedback you got. This is just you inside your own head thinking this.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going through the things that you're thinking about that are, and that, I mean, it's very interesting because it is very much like a relationship.
Yeah.
And George Harrison's wife, Olivia, said, I have friends that ask me, how did you make a marriage last so long? What's the secret to making a marriage? And she said, don't get divorced.
Yeah. Just take it off the table.
So there's this massive part, I think, of remaining a band is you're doing your own problem solving because you're massively dedicated to this thing.
Right.
You want to see it work. You want to see it function. And after investing a lot into something, it's really hard to find something that is going to function the same way.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so you'd have to start all over again. So this idea of working hard, and then you understand why there's people who do use revolving members, because if a core can stay together and see their purpose and their direction and what they're doing, they just want to keep doing it because this is the thing that everyone understands them through.
Right.
And is able to perceive something about them through. I kind of can't blame them in the end. You know what I mean? But because I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's always like the best thing for a band to have done. It's, I don't know. The Stones seem pretty happy.
But it's a rarity, though, man. You got to admit, though, man. Like, you don't see a lot of like bands that go 10 plus years, 20 years with the same four guys. It has happened, and I'm sure there's plenty of other bands out there, man, who have done it. But I think it's more a rarity than the norm for sure.
Yeah, it's what's on people's minds about things, and it's really weird to read. I read a lot of the stories of bands and the shitty record deals people get. You just can't believe Van Halen, got what Alex Van Halen's book. I'm like, I can't believe that they got that bad a deal.
Yeah.
That third record in, they're all still living with their parents.
I know. Crazy.
And you just have no idea that things had worked that way for a band like that.
So that's why being David Lee Roth's love child has not paid off for me at this point. Then it's the record deal that explains it.
But and then Devo, like they've done a number of albums, and then the drummer is like, God, I have a kid. The labels dropped us. I have a kid. I have to think about. And I'm like, aren't you guys like making it? Like, what is happening? Why? How is that not happening? It's just, it's so hard to understand how that works. But
yeah, it's pretty crazy. And so I'm glad you brought up reading Alex Van Halen's book. I'm wondering because so many guys have used as of late in the music world. Not that music biographies or memoirs are anything new, but it does seem like though it's become like a creative outlet that a lot of musicians explore. Is there a book in JOE Lally's future?
I've thought about it because sometimes I just feel like there's a story to tell, and maybe everyone does have a book in them, if you find the right topic or something. But I realized right away that like, I'm not interested in trying to tell Fugazi's story because honestly, it makes no sense to me. The period of the band that actually doesn't, it's like a blur of similar things. I have no idea what happened when.
Right.
And then luckily there's like the Fugazi Live series, so I can go online and go, oh, right, that happened. And I know, like, I turned 30 in Tasmania, because there was a day off you get a day off on your birthday. That's what happened in the band.
Okay.
Oh, okay. We were at a hotel and I saw a brochure for nighttime devil feeding. I was like, hey, we're doing this. And it was Tasmanian devils being fed. They're nocturnal, so they get fed at night. So that's what we did on the day off.
And so that's interesting. So obviously it goes without saying then that if it's your birthday, then so 4 times a year you guys don't schedule a gig on those dates then.
Pretty much. If there's a tour during someone's birthday, then it's tried. They try to like maneuver a show to where you end up with a day off to do something.
Okay.
because we're out working hard. We would have a day off every 10 days. That was
Yeah.
the general plan, even if we're out for, a couple of months.
Now, this has been debated, obviously, man, and I'm going to ask, specifically, and you can elaborate on and include your other musical products or projects, but specifically during the, during your years in Fugazi, is there an album or a project that you would point at and say, here we were hitting our creative high point, or even just in your opinion, man? Obviously, people are going to debate their favorite Fugazi album, where they think you guys were at your best or whatever, man. But is there one that stands out for you?
There's, I think the obvious thing is that we're a three-piece.
Yeah.
In a sense, in the beginning, we're a three-piece. And even though we do the first two EPs, as things are changing, Guy is in the band. Ian and I spent a year of writing before we went out on the road as a four-piece. And we did the States and Europe.
Yeah.
With Guy as a backup singer, tours.
Okay.
And those were lengthy tours, so that's quite a bit of time. So 87 to 89, and then we're recording Repeater with Guy. So that's, to me, that's an obvious thing to sort of point out and go, like, we get to be another band at that point.
Right.
So that in itself is, in a way, it's like it's easier to forget about that, because it was such a significant change that just had to happen. And it was a very welcome change. And then the things that happen after that is just the pushing forward of, well, we did that. Okay, now what is the next one? Because the next one has to be different. And so it was always the last record.
Right.
That was the interesting record.
Right.
But it was a series of, like, just trying to push. I'm not saying that we were always successful at doing it, but we were always challenging ourselves to try not to just be set and kind of rest on, like, oh, well, that's the kind of thing we do. Bam. You know what I mean? So it was always the last album. So I always kind of say, well, we kind of ended on the argument, so that would be where we seem to have peaked,
Yeah.
But who knows? What I wanted to say about writing a book was, therefore, the band being sort of out of the question, I think the interesting part about me is getting everything up until the band.
Yes.
Because there's this story of just being like, because I think people relate, and that's what I like about a lot of the books I read. Even the Beatles stuff, the really interesting shit to me is them growing up. And like what they're doing to before the Beatles, or like anyone even knows, or they go to Hamburg or anything. That shit is so interesting to me, because that's what you struggle with as a kid, is like those kinds of decisions, because there's all this stuff put before you, and you're supposed to pick a thing, and you're supposed to know, and people are always asking you, what are you going to do? What are you going to be? And of course you're just like, I don't fucking know anything from anything.
Yeah.
How the hell am I supposed to answer that question? And so I think those books are interesting, because I think it's actually helpful to people and useful to people, or at least interesting to people,
Yeah. That's kind of where I am too, man. Like, the particular project that I want to work on is kind of like the first 2 decades of my life, man. Because, not to get into depth, like, about myself or whatever, man, but, I did spend the first, like, couple of decades, my parents belonged to a cult, you know what I mean? And I always think there's kind of like I always think there's certainly a curiosity, and people want to hear from people that, spent their childhoods in those type of, in those type of environments, man. So I feel like if I had anything to say, a lot like you're saying, it would be those first 18, 20 years of my life,
Yeah.
I
I don't know that my memory is any good for.
That's the hard part. That's the hard part. Yeah.
Trying to do that shit, but it is, and I think we do change things, actually, as time goes on.
Yeah.
We try to make sense of things, and we kind of look back as like decisions were made because, and it's like, how right are you about that? I have no idea.
Right.
But just trying to get down a series of events sometimes is kind of interesting enough, because it's like, well, why did that happen? It's like, hell if I know,
Right.
But it did.
Yeah. And sometimes when you're trying to remember stuff like from the past, man, you got to take a little bit of like creative license, and sometimes just, try to, paraphrase or try to remember like what you can and as best you can.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it isn't verbatim necessarily. You can't remember conversations you had. You know what I mean? Like, word for word that you had. You know what I mean? Years and years ago. I mean, recreate what you can't remember. I guess don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. I guess is what they all.
What they say. That's storytelling. That's
storytelling. And so along your journey, what was the toughest decision you had to make?
It's weird because I guess for me it's like that thing about quitting NASA, like that might have been a tough decision for someone to make.
Yeah.
But it was like a life and death thing for me.
Yeah.
It's like this, if I stay at this thing that's right for so many other people, that would be the obvious thing to do. That's the decision to be made. That shit is gonna kill me. It was very easy to go like, okay, I can't do this anymore. And I had to turn away from that. And so, that, like I said, that decision affects where I'm at today. Because other decisions along the way were like somewhat based on that. It's like, well, I made that decision then for a reason. Right. Because I want to be happy about like who I am and what I'm going to do or whatever. I don't know, maybe they weren't like the greatest decision, but I don't regret them. You know what I mean? And therefore they weren't hard because it was like.
So it's not a regret. It's not a regret per se.
Yeah, totally not. And so that's why it's hard to understand. It's hard to look back and go, what was a really hard decision to make? Even for the band to stop playing when it did, in a sense, it looks like it would have been a very hard decision to make because I didn't want it to stop.
Right.
But there was a very clear understanding of Brendan's life being thrown into turmoil. He was about to have his third child and his father-in-law died. Yep. And just as a member within his family, what was being expected of him and having control over his life. My life was completely like up to the band. I threw my lot in. I was like, well, what is the band doing? As a band, and that is who I am. And so when his life needed that kind of freedom to make decisions about what he's doing, we all realized that the band can't be sort of the band or partial commitment or part of the way of what we can get done. It just wasn't going to function that way.
And so obviously that option is off the table, man. There was no way that you were going to replace a member, right? It was total solitude with you guys.
Absolutely.
Solidarity, I should say. Solidarity.
I mean, Brendan would have, of course, felt that he was betraying us, and some of those feelings would have to come to you. And so, of course, he would have said things like, a guy who worked for us who played second drums, Jerry Busher. I'm sure Brendan, I can't remember perfectly, but I'm sure Brendan was like, get Jerry to play drums. And it's just like, we can't do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. We just all knew that we can't do that. We understand the sentiment of the thought, but for us, the band is this. And we all just held that the same way. That's why, as much as I played music with other people, there's, established artists in Italy that I respected. And he liked covering a Fugazi song. I was just like, I can't play that with you. I just can't do it. I can't play like that, even though it was just one guy that I liked, you know what I mean, that I was intimate with as a friend and like cared about, I still was just like, oh, that's a thing I can't do. It's just like a betrayal to the band.
Right. I find that fascinating, though, the fact, though, man, that because you got to admit, man, you've been in this industry. Most bands would just be like, okay, Brendan's out, we're plugging somebody else in, and the show goes on. You know what I mean? Very rarely, man, like, will a band pull the plug on the whole kit and caboodle and just be like, we are done because one member has to step away. That really is an elevated way of thinking and truly, really, I think what a band is all about.
It is to us. I mean, that's why I'm saying it's honestly, it's this way about songs. I've never done this and gone out and played with all the different things I do with my solo music and stuff like that, I never just suddenly played a bit of a Fugazi song with somebody.
Right.
It's an absolute, it's like a there's just this horrible feeling about what it is. It's taking care of something that means something to you and not denigrating it, or
Yeah.
I don't even know what the right words are, but it's it just wouldn't, it wouldn't be right, you know, on a spiritual level
Right.
for myself
Right.
and the rest of the band. It would actually hurt myself and the others. It's very
Yeah.
weird, but it's a very clear and understood thing.
And the fact that you and the three other guys all feel that same kinship is remarkable as well. It's not like one guy is out there, you know, hey, I'm throwing Fugazi songs into the set, you know, like
I'm Fugazi.
yeah, I'm Fugazi. Yeah.
I decided now that you
Yeah.
know, and you get three people together. I mean,
Show
somebody
up, if I show up at the bar tonight and see Ian Mackay's Fugazi, you know what I mean?
isn't. I mean, that's literally, that seems to be over the years. Some version of that has been done with bands and different members of bands doing.
Yeah.
It. Just like
Yeah.
that is just feels so fucked up. So it's anyway. Those are those things that you're just trying to protect, and there's, you know, and that gives you it just gives you something on a personal level that helps you through every day. It's very nice.
Yeah. And so let me ask you about your current musical project. So MESSTHETICS did just put out an album last year. And who is the saxophone player that you tapped from Buffalo, New York, upstate New York? We're representing on this album, huh? I'm an upstate New Yorker, man. So Buffalo's right down the road, man. So James Brandon Lewis, how do you hook up with this young man and make music with him?
Well, the you know, the full story would be that I come back from Italy and I play this instrumental music I talked about to Brendan.
Yep.
And Brendan goes, "Oh, I know the guy in DC we should play with," and that's Anthony Pirog, to play guitar, because he's seen Anthony play in so many different types of band, types of music. Okay, so that is a whole world into it. Okay, that's a different world than Brendan and I.
Yeah.
Anthony had played in surf bands, jazz kind of things, free jazz, you know, atmospheric, experimental, blah 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 blah. The list goes on. R&B, kind of bluegrass, you know, Danny Gatton's music, where everyone's playing this Telecaster, like unexplainable, just super fast. They couldn't pigeonhole Danny Gatton. And then that's a thing he still does. Anthony still goes up with other tele players and they play his music. So it's very hard to like pin that into anything. And so rewind like 11 or 12 years now, and a guy who's about to come to DC, by the way, William Hooker, I think a drummer, who put a record together, put a recording date together, and Anthony and James Brandon Lewis met at this recording date. They're both in the studio playing with people. The way those albums happen is you understand you're being called into this thing, and then you're told some things, or you're given some melodies, or however it works. But it kind of happens that day or whatever. And then that's, you know, you may never see those people again. But when they played, they heard each other musically in a different way than maybe anyone else in the room heard each other.
Right.
And everyone else split up, and they went and got something to eat and talked. And then over time, since that date, James brought Anthony into his band that would go tour in Europe. I don't know the extent of all the things they've actually touched base on and played shows together or done, you know, whatever. But James therefore became an obvious choice for Anthony as he started to hear, like, what's it like if someone else is soloing in what we do? So when we played Brooklyn and James was in town, he would come and join us for a song. And then it became like for a couple of songs. And then after COVID, him joining us on a couple of songs, that moved into a different feeling for the first time. It wasn't just like, oh, that works.
Right.
It was somehow set more deeply in what was happening, and it started to feel different and wild.
Yeah.
And so after that date, we were coming back up to Brooklyn like months later. And James said, if you come the night before, and we were saying, get up and play with us at this Union Pool show in, where is that, in Brooklyn? And, or wherever Union Pool is, because I'm an idiot. And so he said, if you show up the evening before, you can come into the studio and do a date, a song with me. And so we were like, okay, what's the song? And he was like, it's not hard, just come in. And so we just got there the evening before, and it was just chord changes that we kept doing through the song.
Right.
And so we did that for his record. I is what it was called.
Okay.
So that recording, and then playing his song the next day that we learned that night, with him playing some of our songs with us.
Yeah.
And just kind of getting into it like that was that evening and that next afternoon. That was more time than we'd ever spent playing together, I think.
Yeah.
And that was enough to just feel it all and go like, oh. And we were writing our next record at that time.
Yeah.
So by the fall, that it was just like, how can we not see what this is like?
Yeah.
And he came down in the fall, and literally we had one practice in this room. And then we went in the studio for 2 days and accidentally did the record. And then we had a recording date that we played with him here in DC. I mean,
that sounds nice how music is
alive.
happening. That sounds nice how music has happened, at different points in time in your life, though, where it really seems like it's organic. It just kind of it just kind of almost cultivates itself.
Yeah.
That's gotta feel very inspiring as an artist.
It is, I feel unbelievably fortunate to, like, it's almost feeling like you're in the right place at the right time. But part of that is based on extreme decisions I've made that we're talking about, you know what I mean? That allow you to be available to some of the things that do happen. And some of the what you could say are risks that you take. You want to find out about a thing, and so then you pursue, and then you take that chance. I mean, a lot of bands could be like, we don't know that guy. He can't just come up and play.
Right.
It's not the way some bands work. And then there are bands that is the way that they work. And then there's all different ways to deal with that. You know what I mean? And it just made sense. I don't know how long it will last. James has so many cool records and interesting records, and he just has his own thing that, it's just nice while we're doing it. And I'm really happy playing these shows, because when we play with James, people are just unanimously like, I don't really like that kind of thing, and I like this. Like, I don't know what I feel about jazz, but now I think I like it.
Yeah.
You know how people get with like genres and trying to understand what they're hearing based on what they know and what they're feeling. And and of course it has nothing to do with genres. Right. It's like, I'm glad you liked what we're doing, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, genres is kind of a dicey thing. I mean, especially me talking to a lot of guys in the rock and metal world on this podcast. It really seems like there's genres and subgenres of the subgenres. It's gotten pretty watered down in the music world. But I may have asked you this the first time I had you on, man. But when people get into playing music, it seems like people get enamored with being the front man or shredding like Eddie Van Halen. How did you get drawn to the bass, which obviously is important in a band, holds down the low end, extremely important component of the rhythm section, but not always looked at by young kids necessarily as the most glamorous of positions in the band. Did you choose the bass, or did it kind of choose you?
It's, I always feel that we're all drawn to our instruments, and that it is the instrument sort of calling us, so I do feel like the instrument chooses you. I do have that general feeling, but of course I'm me, and I know what happened in my case, so I can describe things that are me choosing.
What happened in your case? Sure.
I mean, but ultimately looking back, I'm like, it's just the sound of the thing that I could hear. But I have to say, as a kid, I'm listening to Sly and the Family Stone. I'm listening to, Larry Graham's next band, Graham Central Station. Yeah. And on his records, it says lead bass.
Yeah.
And so some thing is put into my mind at that point. So, and there's just something about all of the R&B and soul and funk that I'm listening to. You can't not hear that when listening to James Brown.
Right.
What the bass is doing. So it's massively standing out there. Then there's like, I'm really into Otis Redding is one of the very first things where I'm like, hey, what is that? Try a Little Tenderness is the real first deep, deep song speaking to me.
Yeah.
And that's, that's like Donald Duck Dunn, playing bass.
Yep.
So it's kind of like the bass has really been talking to me, you know what I mean? And then it's way up front in all of this soul, funk, and R&B, right? So it's obviously outstanding. It's just that by the time I come around to going, oh, maybe I could do this, I'm just looking at it from a different perspective, because now I've kind of gone through a couple of years of classic rock, and that shows me like Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, and some heavy rock. But it's those guys' riffs, it's guitar players' riffs that are really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Not knowing sometimes that it's the bass player who wrote that shit. And that's both in, well, it's just in different bands like Sabbath or Zeppelin, you've got the bass player writing stuff too. If not a lot, Sabbath is a lot of Geezer Butler.
Yeah.
But those, and so it's a series of things that are happening that guide it. But one of the things that shows up in punk is Peter Hook's role in Joy Division, and very much Jah Wobble's role in Public Image. And so then that brings that back around. So do you see what I mean? How it kind of is and isn't. They are not the standout people, and yet to the bass player they are.
Right. Right.
It's right. It is and it's not. It's always going to be the singer in both of those bands.
Yeah.
But if you're a musician, you might be kind of like totally intrigued by any member of those bands, because they're such different operating bands as far as their writing and the roles that the instruments are now fulfilling in the writing. And so, yeah, it's this combination of things. So that's really the formula that makes, me kind of try it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when you're playing instrumental music, jazz instrumental music, does it scratch a different itch than back when you played the Fugazi stuff, man? Like, what's the difference, man, as far as like the satisfaction you get out of playing the music you're playing now, as opposed to if you can recall the satisfaction you got of playing music back then?
It is very different, and I'm still very satisfied with it.
Yeah.
It's very different having singers.
Yeah.
And part of the difference is that, people like the music more when they're singers.
Yeah. I wonder why that is.
And then there's the other way that people do like music, which is still kind of astonishing when there isn't singers. The fact that they still like it, and they're still really like kind of shocked that they like it, and they're telling you that they like it because, especially when there's two. I mean, the last show, we just played the other night, and it was the trio. And so I know people were enjoying it, and people talk to you about it and stuff. And so I know that it's still true, although lately most of our shows are with James. And when people talk about that, it's almost like you can see that the two singers from Fugazi are replaced by these two instrumentalists who are the singers.
Right.
They are technically singing in the band because they're doing solos. And so it does kind of function the same way, and they are into it because I don't think they are soloed to death. They are not, the music we're playing is not trying to figure itself out. It is actually based on, and therefore we come to the instrumental writing, which is very interesting because you don't have to have a whole bunch of parts to keep things interesting. But I've always felt that. That's something that I was trying to do in Fugazi. I was trying to go, can I make them satisfied? And I actually haven't changed my bass part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like through this song, which is makes no sense, to a degree, to like try to pursue such a thing. but occasionally it did kind of work that way.
Right.
If nothing else, in provisional, which got recorded twice, by the way, as re-provisional.
Yeah.
So I did clearly achieve my goal because we
You're
recorded
right.
twice.
Right. Right.
It was so good. But anyway, but I, so that is the thing that I've always been trying to do is to set up structure. And if a lot of different things can happen over this, and then we can go into that part, and there's any number of things we can go over that. So I've always kind of seen things that way, but it really is happening now when writing with Anthony, and especially for James, because there's two opportunities for different voices to speak.
Right.
That there's so much less to set up. You can kind of go, oh, there's, a very basic way to put it is there's theme, and then there's kind of the verse waiting for the theme.
Right.
To recur. And I actually wrote a song that way where I was just like, it was an old type of thing. I didn't understand that music from Italy. I said I didn't understand. And then I was like, after hearing James and clicking with James in the band, I was like, oh, now that makes sense, because that's not a bass line throughout this. That's the melody.
Right.
And so that's a song where, like Railroad Tracks Home, where I'm playing a melody with James. Because that's what that is. That's what makes sense.
Right.
To do that. And then when I finished the new way to play that melody, I was just like, dun on, dun on, dun on. And I was like, well, what's that? That's not even writing a part.
Right.
But oddly enough, it was the right thing to play, and everybody understood it, and we just did it, and it didn't subtract from the song. No one ever suggested something more has to be written there. Now that, honestly, that just doesn't make any sense at all. You can't really go like, well, that's how it's done, because why did that work?
Right. Right.
But it did. I don't know. So
right. Sometimes you're trying to look for an explanation, and there might not be one.
There isn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is. It's only that this sounds right because that is only that. It's just that little bit. And it allows for an enormous open space for people to then say what they have to say. Then you state the melody, and then people say what they have to say, or we come back around and take it to the end, take it to its ending. So it's just really weird the way that music works, but it's almost, in a sense, it's almost easier to write. It's bizarre.
Yeah. Now, you haven't done a solo album since 2011. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is there more solo stuff in your future, do you feel like?
I don't know. I started to sort of examine it again when I had my epiphany that I'm not really going to be in one band.
Yeah.
My amazing understanding of my present situation.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe I should just go play that stuff again. So I've been trying to understand it, and I don't really care. I don't know about singing, so I'm not completely confident. I never was. So that's kind of the hardest part about it. But even again, I would go, what I really want to do is go to an open mic.
Yeah.
And just go sing a couple of my songs and try them out and go, does this make sense to do this? And just play bass. But now I know enough that I can accompany myself and just fool around.
Yeah.
Musically. And then go back and sing more verses, and then fool around musically, and then end the song. You know what I mean?
And that's not unheard of either, because you see a lot of stand-up comedians do that too. Before they film their specials or whatever, they go to little comedy clubs and they try their jokes out. They try stuff out.
I tell people all the time that's my students. I just go like, look, you're looking for people to play. The people at the open mic are all very, they're very patient with each other. They're very open to allowing people. They know what this scene is. It's right. People are trying to do what they're trying to do. And hell, if you see somebody who's doing something you like, you can actually talk to them and find out if you like talking to them. Maybe you want to try playing with them. You can meet people to play with there. Yeah. And so I always encourage people like you, this makes sense musically. Just go play it in front of people and see what it feels like. Yeah. Yeah. So.
So I want to ask you, let me talk on some of your other projects. What we see more from CORIKY?
Not that I know of. They just have gotten to their son is senior in high school. Okay. And we just hit a point where I didn't think it meant too much to them to get out too much and do too much playing. And I was just like dying to play.
Yeah.
And the Mesthetics just kind of filled that in, because the Mesthetics were just the opposite.
Right.
CORIKY practiced and wrote for 3 years before playing our first song. And the Mesthetics just didn't require that much playing, and we were out playing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it would work that way for all our new material. We'd put together some ideas and go, oh my God, that's a song. And then we'd just be ready to go play it. It was just the opposite. So anyway, there are more things that are happening with the Mesthetics, so I'm busy with that. But I also want to explore these different things, and like I said, those things are coming, and so I think I'm kind of filling up my time, and I just don't know.
And you are doing a lot of teaching now, man. You know, you're giving bass lessons, man. When you see young students come in nowadays, and I mentioned earlier, the music industry has changed, man. But you know, what are the common dreams and goals of students? And and second part of that question, man, like what are the common pitfalls and mistakes you see a lot of new students making?
Well, I don't know. You know, I don't have a lot of really young kids because I don't know. I don't know how I started. I don't know, like, it's very hard to tell like a kid, you know, like, look, you just have to keep doing this with other people.
Right.
Because you refuse to do everything else. Like you're going to write songs. You just have to get in a room with people.
Yeah.
Because that's really how I learned. So I try to get kids after they've at least done that and played some with people.
Okay.
So they understand what they're trying to work with, and like they're already starting to think, well, how come that doesn't work when I'm with a couple of guys? How come that doesn't work with you know, I'm with a couple of other people doing things?
Right.
And how do we do this easier? So I often try to, you know, again, it's like talking about the future. So when people are coming to me, it's much more about what are you doing? And do you see what it is to actually just do it, to try to write this? And what is it to write a riff?
Right.
To understand that we won't necessarily get an epiphany about like an entire opera of music. You just need to go play. You just need to write something so you have something to work with, like we spoke about. And those are the types of things I try to get them to focus on, because I think that's what I'm good for in giving lessons. That aspect of what we're talking about is why we're doing this and what it takes to do it. If people are too focused on what's going to come out of it and where the future is, I don't know that I can help them.
Right. Right.
And I would, but that's never really come up. So I've generally, like, you know, I've either worked with people who are very young and they just try to do the most that they can with it. And I've had a couple of students like that, and it's been okay. You know, one of them really, I just couldn't, they really didn't want to listen to what I had to say. And then I just had to wait until they were ready to move on. And I'd like,
that's frustrating.
Right. Yeah, you're right. You're done.
Yeah.
Because you're done with me.
Yeah.
You're just done with me. You're not going to pay attention to me. And that's okay. I mean, I think it's a really challenging thing for a young person to deal with this on a screen. How can you get lessons from a person on a screen? So a big part of it is I want them to actually work with kind of the nuts and bolts of playing with people in person when they can.
Yeah.
And then when they're ready to know something more about it, I can talk about a lot of these other things that don't necessarily make sense about playing, about, like, you know, it's mostly it's your imagination. You're not going to really hear things very well on stage all the time.
Right.
You know, and there's so many other things to discuss about the psychology of playing that, you know, there's things about notes and stuff, but I did one master class in Italy, and, you know, Anthony, who's been teaching and who studied, you know, and knows a lot about teaching, he was like, well, because I was like, what am I talking about? He was like, well, you don't want to talk about like scales and, like, you know, details of theory and stuff. Like, you want to talk about those things that, because you've been playing so long, that you can talk about.
Yeah.
And those are the things that really people don't know are there. I don't know how else to describe it, but
No, I
you
get
just
it.
start talking about things that are like, well, I don't know why that is.
Right.
It's just that it's there. And when I was giving the master class, it was somebody playing music on a PA or something nearby. And so I talked about, like, well, listen, I can only hear the basic melody of what's going on. I hear the high note. I hear the high end of what's happening.
Right.
And so I could talk about like how I heard bass fitting into this melody that I didn't know. I don't know what song that was, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I could in real time just kind of go like, you know, look, it's there.
Right.
And then I'd go like, I don't know what those notes are, you know.
Right.
And then I'd have to go like, well, where are they?
Right. Right.
And that's it. Seriously, like that's what it's like to write music with people. Like,
Yeah.
you're just trying to make sense out of it, you know.
Yeah. Now, one project I want to ask about, I want to know like where your head was during the project and what the goal of the objective was and why we didn't get more of Ataxia. You got the chance to work with Klinghoffer and a guitar player that I love. I love John Frusciante. I think he's amazing. What was the initial seed that was planted there? What did you guys want to do? And why wasn't there more of it? I think maybe fans might want to know.
Well, it was, to the last part of that question, it really was just an accident. I mean, I'm living in LA for just about a year. You know, my daughter is 2.5 when we get there. And because I'm closer to John and I think he's not in the Chili Peppers at that moment.
Yeah.
I actually have access to like just have, and our relationship is music conversation.
Yeah.
So we would just talk about music and I'd call him up and talk about music. And at some point he was like, hey, why don't you choose 9 of the solo songs that me and Josh work on together for my solo music? And then we'll go do them as a show at the Knitting Factory in LA. So that was the initiating thought about it. And then I tried to learn 9 of their songs living in a 1-room apartment with my 2.5-year-old and my spouse. And I never try to figure out other people's music.
Yeah.
That's not something I've ever had to do. And I tried to do that. And I went over John's, and me and Josh and John sat down to play the 9 songs that I've chosen. And I haven't figured out how to play one of them correctly.
Yeah.
Like there'll be parts that are kind of right. And then there'll be things that aren't right. Yeah. And there's no one in the group of the 3 of us who can play keyboard. So there's a couple of challenges presented. One, I haven't got most of it right. And so John basically that very first day is like, look, this is what I do with the Chili Peppers. We take music I've written and we go out and play it to the world like a, jukebox.
Yeah.
He's like, why don't we not do that? I feel like I'm kind of wasting my time with you. We could be writing songs together. And I said, it's very kind of you. That would make it easier for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I was like, so my first solo record was formulating. I had left DC for LA with an entire group of songs that would become that, but they weren't finished. And so the concept of those songs was still that idea. Can one riff make a song?
Right.
It wasn't really happening. Even in my solo work, that wasn't happening. But I decided I would put that to the test with this because now I have to memorize 10 songs. 12 days from then was the show. And basically, we set out to write. So the second half of that day of practice was, let's write something. And I started to play a riff, and I didn't know John had turned on his phone to record. And 10 minutes into the recording, that's how he decided to do it. He would record the songs for 10 minutes and go, somewhere in there is the song. I'm just playing the one riff. They decided that that was a good idea, that they would approach songs that they would write different parts over top of the one riff to make it sound like parts were changing.
Okay.
And they took that as an assignment because they were putting out a record a month for a record collection during that time.
Yep.
The label. So for me, it was trying to see if like a theory worked. And for them, it was an assignment that they could fulfill, that they could like, let's try and do that.
Yeah.
And so the next time we got together in like a couple of days or when we could get together, John would say like, I put lyrics on that song, that first song. and these are the parts. And then he knew what dust would be like.
Yeah.
And that was dust. And then the next song, that practice, we would write, and he would record it, and maybe we would get another one, and then he would record that for 10 minutes. And then before the next practice, he would have those with lyrics to them.
Okay.
And that was it. It was just being written during the times we got together before the show.
Yeah.
The problem for me was, how do I remember these 10 songs? I never do this for this
Right.
show. And so I was keeping the songs very simple for that reason. So in a sense, for me, I'm just ripping off an idea of how Joy Division would make it work. How
Right.
Public Image would make it work. You know what I mean? And so it wasn't very creative to me on a level.
But
I
what
was
did you think about? But as John, as a player, what was it like creating music with him? Because even though I see Flea as an amazing bass player, I picked up on something you said there, where John really I feel like he's almost like the conductor of that band. You know what I mean? Like he's really designing, he's really architecting a lot of that music.
Totally.
Yeah.
There may have been they added synthesizer after the fact, after the recording. I think we recorded for a couple of days, and that was the 10 songs. And that was before the show.
Yeah.
So that was like, oh, do you mind if we record these? And, the weekend before the Monday we were going to play, which then turned into Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah.
2 shows.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, if you want to, but part of me was going like, shit, I didn't know that when we were writing this stuff. I could have tried to.
Right. Kind of changes the dynamic of everything a little.
I was not feeling so totally stoked about that, but I was also flattered that he even wanted to record it. So I was just like, well, if he likes it and they like it and they think that it's good enough to do. And I like them, listening back to it, I like that it is what it is, that it served the purpose that I was trying to understand. Did it really work? And I think it answers that question. It does work. There's a lot of people that have come up to me.
Yeah.
And said like they're at this show that the Mesthetics are playing because they're like, I liked Ataxia, and that's why I came down to see what you were doing.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did that,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was interesting to do. It was totally interesting to try to work that stuff because yes, John was, the conductor of that music. Josh might have done some synthesizer stuff somewhere, and then he, everyone had to sing, so I had to sing a song. Josh had to sing a song. And
yeah, I feel like that's kind of his role in the Chili Peppers too, because like I said, even though those guys are very capable musicians, I always kind of feel like, and this is not to impugn the rest of the Chili Peppers, but I feel like John is kind of like that. He's kind of like the purveyor, the overseer of the music. I mean, he's kind of he's kind of like the mad conductor putting it all together. And as much as they're all capable, Chad and Flea and all of them at their individual parts, I feel like John really seems like the genius in that band.
I think that they do that with the guitar player.
Yeah.
I think that was the role of the guitar player in the Chili Peppers. They're like the initiator. And I think everyone is going to come in and be who they are.
Yeah.
And shape the outside of the, put the flesh on the bones and everything. But I think literally that is it really is his role, is to kind of go like, these are the songs we have.
Yeah.
And then it's how the band treats the songs. And I think that that's what like sort of Josh had to come in and do.
Yep.
When Josh was a guitar player.
Yep. Now, so before I let you out of here, because you've been so generous with your time, and we've gone like an hour and a half here, and it just has flown right by, man, and absolutely unbelievable, man. But so if people want to tap into your various projects, man, and I know everyone's out there on social media somewhere. God forbid that we're not out there somewhere. But so if people want to tap in with what you're doing, your various projects, where are the best places?
There's, I guess, you can follow the Mesthetics are on Instagram and somewhere on, there's a mesthetics.com or net or org or whatever the hell it is. I don't even know what it is. None of us probably even look at it enough. It's so weird about being like an old shit and trying to run this type of shit because I seriously don't care and I don't look at these things enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think if you search around, you're going to find connections to like reviews people are writing about us, articles people written, and definitely on YouTube you can find the people posting those things. But the Instagram is going to take you to different things posted for shows, I guess, and like where you'll find it with people
Yeah.
putting that
Joe,
stuff up.
so Joe is basically saying he's not going to hold your hand. You guys know how to work your internet. Let your fingers do the walking. That's what they used to say about the yellow pages, right? But now put your fingers on the keyboard and type in the names of the bands. For God's sakes, we can't do it for you. We can't do it for you. Everyone knows how to work their little gadgets and gizmos nowadays.
And you'll find the difference to just say the Mesthetics and James Brandon Lewis. That'll kind of hook you to the quartet playing, as opposed to the Mesthetics bringing you to possibly just the trio. But I'm sure putting in the Mesthetics, you're going to end up, James will be pulled into it, our work with him.
Yeah, I'm the same way with the technology, though, and all these various things. Like, obviously, on here, I do 2 separate podcasts. I do the music one, I do a boxing one. But I refuse, and people have asked me, how come you don't have a separate Facebook for both podcasts? No. I put updates and new episodes and all the news for both podcasts on one Facebook. I refuse to carry two more Facebook accounts. It's just crazy. It's crazy. And I work off the one Instagram page for both of them. If I put up shorts or poignant parts of the conversations, it's just too much. It's just too much.
Just having to juggle between the different things. It's like, it's just me in the same place. It is. It's me. Yeah, it's me in the same place. Yeah. Whatever. It seems so pretentious to be like, oh, I'm here and I'm here and I'm here and I'm here. It's like too much. I need a new product name over there and over there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to saturate the market with too much of me. Yeah, the world doesn't need that. The world doesn't need that. But listen, man, I always love talking to you, man. And seriously, thank you again for being so generous with your time, man. Sure, and even in my little preamble, before you came onto the actual show, I said, this is my second time having him. So I hope he wouldn't take umbrage with the fact of, once someone's a multiple guest, I start to refer to them as friend of the show. So that's you now.
All right. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm around.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. And we will definitely do this again because I love the conversations, man. And, you've always got something cool and interesting going, man. So you've always got a platform here to come on and talk about it, man.
Right on.
Yeah,
Thanks
appreciate
so
you, man. Yeah, Thank you, man. Good talking to you again, Joe. Thanks, buddy.
You too. Have a great day.
All right. Have a good one, brother. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And there he goes, folks. At the risk of embarrassing him because I know he's a super humble guy, man. But listen, man, a legend. I'm going to say it for him because now he's no longer in the Google Meet room here. So I'm going to just say it, a music legend. If for no other reason, and he is doing great, as I said, interesting stuff right now. Check out the Mesthetics doing instrumental music, jazz instrumental music, which is absolutely amazing. I find it so relaxing, cathartic, cleansing. I am one of those kind of guys who poo-pooed jazz early on in my life, and they've really come full circle to really enjoy it. CORIKY was a project that he did. I'll spell that for you guys. CORIKY. Obviously, JOE LALLY has solo albums out there. His last one was 2011. Why Should I Get Used to It? And he has a few other ones as well. So it's been a minute since he's put out anything on the solo front, but the most recent Mesthetics album with James Brandon Lewis came out in 2024. So there is music out there. So all his projects are out there. And of course, you can go back and check out the great, the legendary, the groundbreaking, the innovative FUGAZI and all the amazing albums that his fingerprint is on with that band. So there is a lot of music out there and a lot of cool, interesting projects with JOE LALLY on them and his bass playing on them. So go out and support him, man. If they're playing near you, go check them out. Again, I give this spiel every couple of episodes. Got to get it off my chest. Go out and support live music, folks. We talked about in that episode, the industry has changed, but nevertheless, these guys are still out there making the living that they know how to make. Go out and get some merch. Go out and check out a live show. Go stream their albums. Do whatever you can to lift up the scene or your individual favorite artists. Whatever you can do to help musicians and artists, because it is not always an easy road for all of them. Everybody isn't Taylor Swift rolling around in mountains of money. Most artists are out there, doing it to make their nut, to make a living. So go out there and support these guys, man. You love what they do. You know, you dig them on some level, go out there and show them some love. And I'm going to get off my soapbox because I don't want to get off on that. That's not the point, man. But again, Joe Lally, so generous with his time, man. Absolutely love having him on. And yes, I am going to reiterate it again. A friend of the show, for sure. So really appreciate the fact that he just spent 90 minutes chopping it up with me, man. And we covered a lot of ground. We moved all over the board with it. We talked about it a lot. So hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. We got pretty in-depth and pretty deep. So listen, my thanks, of course, to Joe Lally. Now I'll go into pimp mode because I was going to do it before he came on here. The pimp pan, even after a 90-minute conversation, feeling strong. So I'm going to pimp my podcast. Go check out PodScum on Facebook. Again, the page is Off the Couch Boxing and PodScum because as you heard me tell Joe, I will not carry two Facebook accounts. So you'll get updates on both of my podcasts on one Facebook page. In this instance, you're watching an episode of PodScum, but if you're into Off the Couch Boxing, both podcasts are promoted, talked about, announcements are made with regards to both on new episodes, when they're dropping, who will be on those episodes, and any other big pertinent news. If it's popping off in the music, arts, and entertainment world, or if it's popping off in the boxing world and in the fight game, I will put it up there, man, if it is newsworthy and noteworthy. So if it pops up on my radar, I'm keeping y'all in the loop. And of course, if you're watching right now, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and most importantly, make sure to smash that notification bell to stay tapped in because we get down here, we get busy with the most amazing and real conversations anywhere on planet Earth. And you just saw one right there with the legend himself, Joe Lally, who, again, I want to express my sincerest gratitude for coming on here. Always enjoy conversations with that guy, man. And as I said, go check out his many musical projects, starting with Fugazi. You can check out CORIKY. You can check out Joe Lally's solo albums, and you can check out the MESSTHETICS. And again, if you want to find information on any of those bands, do your goddamn research, all right? Get on your computers and type it up and find out who, where, what, when, why, where they're playing, what they got dropping, who's in the band, whatever you want to know. The information is out there, folks. The internet is the information superhighway. So go explore it. And most importantly, lift these artists up, man, and help support them, man. And like I said, if you dig what they do, man, go dive in, man, and help them out. So with that being said, man, I hope you guys dug that episode of PodScum as much as I dug spending 90 minutes chopping it up with Joe Lally, man. So again, another amazing one in the books. This is your boy Reckless Rex reminding you guys to take it easy and keep it sleazy.